It's crunch time in the fight for the final 2026 F1 race seats, with 3 drivers knowing that what they do in the next few weeks will decide whether they even stay on the grid at all. The Red Bull teams are at the centre of it all. While Max Verstappen is locked into Red Bull Racing for 2026, the other 3 F1 drivers within Red Bull's stable could all move around or get squeezed out. And there's going to be no alternative F1 drive for anyone jettisoned from the Red Bull teams, as we've learned that Alpine has already ruled out taking any of the potential Red Bull rejects for its still open 2026 seat. The race to be Verstappen's 2026 teammate is a straight fight between struggling incumbent Yuki Tsunoda and high-flying rookie Isaac Hadjar. Hadjar is the clear favourite, everything is pointing towards him getting the nod, with no reservations from his side at least about the switch being too soon. In fact, he thinks stepping up to Red Bull to coincide with the new regulations and consequent change of car characteristics will be way easier than when Tsunoda and Liam Lawson stepped up to the team and had to deal with the current car and its idiosyncrasies that only Verstappen has been able to push through. Helmut Marko said Red Bull won't properly decide its 2026 lineups until next month's Mexican Grand Prix, but that's only 3 races away, and the race to be Verstappen's teammate is only trending one way. Baku was a slight plot twist. Tsunoda had his best Red Bull racing weekend yet, and Hadjar blew a chance to do much better than 10th. But it's going to take more than that to change the overall trajectory. German publication Automotor und Sport even declared that Hadjar's 2026 Red Bull deal was done after Monza earlier this month. When we asked Hadjar in Baku if he knew who he'd be racing for next year, he replied, "No, I have an idea, but I don't know." And while Hadjar to Red Bull looks nailed on, Tsunoda can't count on having a Racing Bull seat to drop back into, because Red Bull's ideal plan has long been to put its F2 driver Arvid Lindblad into one of those seats in 2026. So it's Tsunoda versus Lawson for one Racing Bull seat, and a strong chance that whoever loses that fight is out of F1. Red Bull team principal Laurent Mekies declared after a messy Monza that showing better race pace was key to Tsunoda's chances of hanging on to his seat. Mekies wanted clean samples of what Tsunoda could actually do on Sundays, and he was impressed with what he got in Baku. Okay, Tsunoda still got stuck in DRS trains, was jumped by Lawson on cold tyres and finished only 6th as Verstappen dominated, but Mekies called it not only his best result but also best race pace with us. Mekies reckons Tsunoda was within 2 4/10 of a second per lap of Verstappen's pace when traffic allowed, and was satisfied with that given how strong Verstappen was in Baku. Tsunoda was in a much more confident mindset in Azerbaijan after changes that began when he cancelled his summer holiday and went straight from Red Bull's depressing Hungarian Grand Prix to the factory for the first of a series of extra simulator sessions. One of those after Monza brought what Tsunoda called a massive breakthrough that he felt really worked around Baku. Tsunoda wouldn't reveal exactly what it was and whether it was a setup or driving style change, but he felt it made a huge difference to how he could manage the tyres in a race stint. It's clear Mekies wants Tsunoda, who he knows so well from their years at what's now Racing Bulls together, to succeed and show the performance he's sure he is capable of. With the clock ticking before Red Bull's 2026 decision, this is probably still too little too late to make the team commit to another year of Tsunoda in its top team. But if the breakthrough sticks, then it might do his chances of at least going back to Racing Bulls a favour, although that's not entirely in his hands. Unluckily for Tsunoda, his best Red Bull weekend coincided with a new F1 peak for Lawson, which culminated with Lawson's Racing Bulls beating Tsunoda's Red Bull to 5th place. Lawson couldn't have picked a better time to put together his most complete F1 weekend yet, excelling in the tricky conditions in qualifying to take 3rd on the grid and then only dropping behind the faster Mercedes in the race. After a couple of off weekends, with Zandvoort ruined by a clash with Carlos Sainz and a general struggle at Monza which included a clash with Tsunoda, Lawson was firmly back to the form that had brought him 4 top 8 finishes in the 7 races before the summer break. There didn't seem to be much separating Lawson and Hadjar's pace all weekend, as has been the case in recent months, once Lawson shook off the funk from his abrupt Red Bull demotion. But Lawson absolutely nailed the execution when it mattered in Baku, while Hadjar was left ruining costly errors at the same corner in both qualifying and the race. That will only help Lawson as Red Bull makes its final driver call over the next few races. Unlike Hadjar, Lawson isn't in the mix for the senior team. That's definitely off the cards for now after his painful 2 weekends as Verstappen's teammate at the start of this year. But if Lawson continues to prove a dependable point scorer, he could perhaps convince Red Bull that he's the ideal benchmark driver for Lindblad in the second team, especially because a benchmark really will be needed. Lindblad's F2 rookie season built up nicely to a first feature race win in Spain, but it's been a messy 3 months since then, and he's fallen from 3rd to 7th in the standings. Red Bull firmly believes in the 18-year-old's potential, hence pushing for an exemption to get him an F1 Super License when he was still 17, just in case he was needed early. It's focusing on the very high peaks rather than the bits in between, as anyone scrutinising Ollie Behrman and Kimi Antonelli's 2024 F2 seasons needed to. When Red Bull began leaning towards putting Lindblad into Racing Bulls for 2026, both Tsunoda and Lawson were struggling. If both now turn a corner, it's not impossible Red Bull could decide to stick with them both after all and keep Lindblad in F2 for another year. But Lawson and Tsunoda can't count on that, and are better off assuming this is a 2-1 won't go for now. Lawson admitted before Baku that he'd spent his whole career just focused on getting to F1 and then getting himself into a Red Bull racing seat. He's done both, one just didn't last very long. Now he might have to think about alternatives. He intimated he might have had some talks with other F1 teams, but it doesn't look like he, or Tsunoda if he loses this fight, will have any other options. Alpine is the other F1 team that spent 2025 puzzling over what to do with its second seat, so given Tsunoda and Lawson have both looked pretty decent when not in Red Bull racing cars, you'd have thought that whoever gets the boot might land at Alpine. But no, that door is closed. Team boss Flavio Briatore revealed to us in Baku that his team is not looking beyond incumbent Franco Colapinto and reserve driver Paul Aron for Pierre Gasly's 2026 teammate. Briatore doesn't view anyone on the current F1 grid as a viable alternative. His summary of the field was to say, take away Max, the rest, and give a shrug and a frown. Sorry Liam and Yuki, but that shrug includes you. But also everyone else who isn't Max Verstappen if it's any consolation, and maybe Alpine's 2025 form softens that blow too. Flavio was pretty dismissive of everyone on the F1 ladder right now too, saying, we see other ones, but we don't feel it, because the good guys go boom. The man who took Michael Schumacher and Fernando Alonso to F1 titles under the Benetton/Renault banners referenced Schumacher's Mercedes sports car pace and Alonso's early F1 tests as that kind of boom, and also said he finds current up and down F2 impossible to read compared to the days of Nico Rosberg and Lewis Hamilton starring in GP2. So with the rest of the 2025 F1 grid and the current F2 grid all dismissed, that leaves Colapinto and Aron on his list. Third behind Gabriel Bortoleto and Hadjar in F2 last year, 21-year-old Aron could become Estonia's first F1 racer and has impressed in FP1 outings both with Alpine and loaned to Sauber. Briatore called him a very nice guy, a very quick driver, which wasn't quite a boom, but was higher praise than most of the current F1 field got from Briatore in our interview with him. As for Colapinto, it seems Briatore now realises there might have been too much pressure on him when he was given Jack Doohan's seat and told to score points, be fast and not crash. 3 targets he initially missed pretty comprehensively. And while we're on the subject of Doohan, no, he wasn't on Briatore's list of 2026 contenders, despite how the team framed his initial demotion in May as just allowing for a temporary evaluation of Colapinto. With Colapinto finally getting more comfortable with the Alpine and getting closer to Gasly, Briatore now thinks he just needed 6 to 8 races to settle in, suggesting Sauber and Mercedes had similar experiences with Bortoleto and Antonelli and are now seeing their drivers' true potential. That gives Colapinto a bit of breathing space, but isn't exactly a ringing endorsement. If Aron gets the nod, it's hard to see Colapinto getting back on the grid with anyone else. It could be game over for his F1 career already. While Alpine's currently stuck at the back of the grid and firmly on course for last in the Constructors' Championship, it expects much better things at the start of the new rules era next year when it switches to Mercedes customer engines. And though it feels like Briatore is a bit lukewarm about both Colapinto and Aron, his logic seems to be that if no one in rival teams or on the F1 ladder is wowing him, it's better to at least take the benefit of Colapinto and Aron being known quantities at Alpine and knowing the team and its cars already. But that means the year in which both Lawson and Tsunoda earned the top F1 team seat they'd dreamt of all their lives could end with one of them dropping right off the F1 grid.